morning. Today we are, hello my dear friends, how are you? And today we are discussing about the Cold War. First we just see in the what is the introductions about the Cold War. First, the term Cold War can be generally defined as a state of tension between two countries in which a side adopts policies to strengthen itself and weaken the others. The Cold War is the situation of a very high critical relations between two countries where tensions remain high and there is a fear of a war always. It is therefore a situation of neither peace or not war. In international relations, Cold War indicates a state of a constant conflict and strict suspicious and mistrust, antagonism and hostility maintained and perpetuated without a direct armed confrontation. And between the adversaries, Cold War is not a state of armed struggle, but such a state is frees the rivals while keeping the peacetime diplomatic relations intact, continue their hostility. Both the antagonists adopt all means other than the war of weaken each other. It is not an armed war, but a diplomatic and an ideological war. It is fought by means of a political propaganda, that is why it is called propaganda war. The Cold War is not an actual war, but the danger of such as a hot war is always imminent. In short, it can be defined as a state of intense diplomatic, political, economic and ideological struggle, sort of armed belligerence and clash. Actually, Cold War means the period of tension between the two superpowers, the US and USSR. We just saw in this case how it is origin and how it is came to the scenario. Origin of Cold War. Regarding the origin of the Cold War, there are different opinions. The term Cold War was for the first time used by Bernard Baruch, an American statesman, but were popularized by Professor Liebman. He used it for describing the tension between the USA and USSR. It is generally believed that the Cold War started after the Russian Revolution of 1971. However, some scholars believe that the Cold War actually started after the Second World War, and the main reason for the Cold War has been attributed to the ideological difference between the two superpowers, where the USA tried to pursued its policy of checking the communist expansion of USSR, and USA took the help of a democracy to check the Soviet expansion. On the other hand, the USSR considered the USA as the leader of the capitalist world, and the USSR believed that the USA was all set to distort the very existence of the USSR. Thus, military suspension between the two superpowers led to a situation when both these countries continue try to expand their base by making the alliances and at the same time rapidly important expanding their military capability. The Cold War did not rise all of a sudden. It propagated gradually. This entire progress can resolve several phases of situations. Then we just see the cause of a Cold War. Regarding the cause of a Cold War, scholars and historians are not unanimous. These causes are broadly divided into two groups, that is, orthodox and revisionist. By revisionist, and according to orthodox view, Soviet Union is secretly responsible for the initiation of the Cold War, as it forcibly established communist regime in East Europe countries in the post-World War II period in violation of its agreement with the Western Allied power, where the revisionists argue that among the Western nations was responsible for the Cold War. We just saw what is the view of Orthodox and how the USSR be responsible for the Cold War. And first is Russian all-willingness to allow democratic elections in the territories liberated from the Nazis and superimposing communist governments. There was especially in the Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary and Romania, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Albania and East Germany. Then second is Russia's refusal to veto on forces from the Iran, where Britain and the USA withdrew their forces, and Soviet Union's pressure on Greece and Turkey by supporting subversive activity of the communists there. Therefore, is the Soviet Union destroyed German industries and transport costly German medicine to Russia as a reparation, adversely affecting already ruined German economy. Then fifth is the maintenance of an unnecessarily large post-war armed force. Then sixth is discontinuation of supplies from Soviet areas of occupation, and there selfish of often obstructive behavior in the newborn international organization. Then eight is refusal by Soviet leaders to help in post-war reconstruction and regimes outside Soviet control. Then revisionistic view of the existence of a USA and revisionistic school of thought accuse America more than the USSR. The following action of the USA displays to the Soviet Union. First, the American military intervention in Russia in 1918-19, which was aimed at overthrowing of the Bolshevik revolution, was still fresh in the memory of the Soviets. And then second, the American refused to inform the Soviet of the Manhattan Project to develop the atomic bomb. Then third, the Soviet suspicion was further deepened by the certain acts of Americans in the post-war years. For example, the United States supported previous Nazi collaboration in American-occupied countries, and notably Italy, and pressurized the Soviets to avoid by its promise to permit free elections in areas vital to Soviet national security, notably Poland. Then fourth, during talks at Yalta, President Roosevelt argued that the Soviet Union can install friendly governments on her western boundaries. Therefore, it is inappropriate to control that the Soviet Union expand into East Europe in the violation of any agreement. And then five, regarding activities of the USSR in Greece, Turkey and Persia, the contention held by the Orthodox that Russia wanted to impose communist government in these countries was also baseless, and because in the Persia the Soviet Union only wanted some. And then revisionistic hold President Truman largely responsible for the Cold War, and had Roosevelt continued to be the president in the post-war period, the Cold War could not have come to such a pass. Objective view, both are responsible. According to objective view, both the superpowers are responsible for the origin of the Cold War, and there are certain objectives response that culminated into Cold War. These are first, misperception The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was rooted not in conflicting interests but in the mutual misunderstanding. The Cold War is described in terms of a property of each party to consider their own actions as virtuous and those of the other of malicious. This is called as mirror image and of course result in the conflict and distrust the tendency of both Soviet and Americans to have the same perception of each other. Then second is mutual antagonism. The Cold War is also seen as a product of a mutual antagonism. The history of the origin of the Cold War indicates the mistrust and consequent fear were the very base of the conflict. Stalin was a cautious of the Americans as aware of him. Then ideological incompatibility and another reason for the Soviet-American conflict was ideological incompatibility. Many Americans were apprehensive of Soviet communist doctrine. There was a particular apprehension that the communism as was an expansionistic cross-cutting ideology intent of bringing world revolution, and Soviet Union was believed in communist whereas USA believed in capitalism. Then fourth, economic interest. While the Western Bloc USA favored capitalist economy, promoting individual initiative and enterprise, whereas the Eastern Bloc favored for the socialistic planned economy controlled by the Western nations are developed countries, but their development is nourished by the explanation of the poor countries of the third world. Then fifth is the objective law. Many historians are of the opinion that it is the law for nature that victorious powers were always fought after the victory, and after the Napoleonic War of the victorious fought among themselves over the distribution of spoils of war. In other regions, the leaders of the two countries were also responsible for the Cold War, as they saw the world differently. They imposed and even different definitions of reality. In some, they became captives of their revisions of reality or the regions where the emergence of the power vacuums. Then we next discuss about the evolution of the Cold War. Thank you to all.